been done. So a quick question here. First one for Gabrielle. It's from the audience. Taxing new fossil fuel heating equipment, will that encourage people to keep older, dirtier equipment in place rather than invest in newer, more efficient equipment? Get a mic.
Sorry, so the question was, if we tax new purchases, that'll make people keep their old system in place.
Correct.
Well, all of the systems eventually have a lifespan. If it's not your oil tank, if it's not your furnace or your boiler, at some point you've got to make a change. I also think that we've seen through many states how incentivizing behavior that you want to see through energy efficiency programs and cash for clunkers, like those types of programs do make a difference depending on whether or not you set the levels and the percentages and the dollar amounts at a convincing rate and one that's in target with what Vermonters are willing to and needing to have in order to make the behavior change you're looking for.
Thank you. Quick question for Tom, please. It keys off one we also had from the audience. Question from the audience was, a big ramp up in green workforce is required, with a question mark. How do we accomplish this in a state with less than 3% unemployment? And I would go back to Sue Minter's comment, I believe, that said there were 200 positions right now at Central Vermont Hospital that haven't been filled. So huge challenge for bodies to actually do the work before they take their vacation. How do we solve that, Tom?
Well, you find them where they are. I think there are people, perhaps in Vermont, more likely in other parts of the country, and certainly outside of the country, who'd be interested in coming to work here. It's not a perfect answer, but we're going to have to work on that very hard. In fact, if we do another pitch a year or two from now, we're likely to be talking about that very subject.
Can I add something? Because Richard Tracy, who would love to be here, and who's with the BPA board, mentioned in his mind, we have an immigration policy where we do allow people from other countries to come and work on our farms. If Americans and Vermonters do not want to get into attics and air seal them, maybe this is an opportunity. Granted, the federal government is putting something in a different place, but that is something that one could look at.
Great, thanks. We have a question here for Tom. What are the anticipated electric demands created by these plans?
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
What are the anticipated electric demands created by these plans?
Well, certainly heat pumps are going to increase electric demand, but part of the solution is solar, either community solar or on-site solar. At this point, with net metering well in effect and a good solution, one of those two options is actually critical to making to the financeability of the program, of the concept, because you basically have to have a system that you're bought into so that you don't have an electric bill in order to pay for the cost of the makeover, the energy makeover. So the three components, which would be weatherization, heat pumps or high efficiency biomass, plus solar, those three things really have to be working together to make the program affordable. It's one of those situations where bigger actually is cheaper.
And I have to add in.
Go right ahead.
The other thing is, that's a great question, but I think it's a question that all of our utilities are already looking at. They're already modeling what's going to happen with heat pumps. So that's a question in my mind that's sort of a step larger than Zero Energy Now. And frankly, you could use Zero Energy Now as a pilot, do 100 projects, monitor real time with e-gauge systems, with heat sensors, in the house and see what that impact is to the grid.
Okay, may I just ask, please, where's Bill Calfee? Okay, Bill Calfee, stand up, please. Please just stand up. My house, Zen #1, right there. Your house. Okay, you posted that. You wanted a little bit of love, clearly. Let me ask this a good question. I think this would be, it's okay. Gabrielle, how would the fee be justified for buildings that are challenging the heat with non-fossil fuel equipment, i.e. mobile homes? Would these be exempt? Good question.
We are seeing advances in mobile homes. I mean, again, they do have a lifespan. While I'd say the mobile home units that for mod and that GMP installed just outside Virgins that are also storage, battery, solar backup, those are not right now prime time, I don't think, in terms of being able to afford that across all mobile home owners and renters. That being said, we do have technology. We do have technology that can do it. The question is, at what point do the existing mobile homes go out of commission? And when they do, are we there and ready to switch to a much more efficient and frankly healthier, more comfortable home for those who need to live in them?
Thank you. Another question, Tom. Does net zero did you include EVs in your modeling? Another good question.
We had a couple of projects in the pilot that did involve EVs, and so in our analysis we had a space for it. We were very focused on the house and we didn't want to mix it up, so I just put the EV outside, although some of the electric usage that was tied to the house certainly went into the EV in some cases, and I just kept that separate from the actual electricity that the house was using.
So Gabrielle, a question, would a carbon tax accomplish the same objectives as a fee bait?
It could. It depends on how it's designed. I also think it's a much broader conversation, as opposed to this is very targeted and specific, and therefore perhaps easier to implement in the short term.
Great, thanks. Maybe you could both address the question of how your respective proposals, which I think you did a little bit, but maybe in more detail, might engage key players in other sectors and galvanize support or engagement of the general public. How might your proposal engage key players in other sectors and or galvanize support in the general public?
In terms of galvanizing support in the general public, we're hoping the program will be largely market-driven in the sense that the savings can pay for some of the upgrades, a large part of it. We do believe that there will need to be significant incentives. We do believe policymakers will need to apply certain pressures, sticks, I suppose, to sort of push people into making these improvements, but this is certainly where we have to go if we're going to address the need. In terms of other players, programs, we are going to need to work very closely with everybody. As I mentioned, the utilities, businesses, banks, financing, and in terms of other specific strategies or programs, such as BED's program, the city of Burlington, we're going to be talking to them today. I have been talking to some of them today, and we hope to network very closely.
And I just say, I think for anything that has the word fee or tax or let's increase any cost at any way whatsoever, as long as it's not your cell phone or clothing, is going to require considerable stakeholder outreach, no matter what. So I would imagine for a fee bait on heating equipment, that would certainly require not only utilities, but legislators, low-income advocates, weatherization agencies, you name it.
Okay, two quick questions for you, Gabrielle. One, would there be a low-income component to the fee bait?
Certainly. I mean, all our initial analysis did was show that we have money that we could provide a refund to low income, but you could make it so that you're actually paying a large chunk of their system, or that you're assisting them with a financing approach that, like Zero Energy Now, through their energy savings, actually allows them to pay off the system over, 5 to 10 year time frame. So certainly, I would imagine that there has to be. Otherwise, we're dinging the people who already have the greatest energy burden.
Okay, one last one for right now for yours, just because it's a cool question. Do you think this fee bait program could create a market for used or Frankensteined fossil fuel equipment, or in cases non-compliance? And if you can use another creature in your answer, you.
Well, hopefully we could turn the Frankenstein into a butterfly. No. No. And go through a metamorphosis. No, I'm just. Certainly, I mean, we have a history of sending bad technology to developing countries, and they don't appreciate it. Could we end up doing that right here in Vermont? Certainly. I think that's a worthwhile concern and question. Do I imagine it being, a one-for-one, that every system we change out would end up going into someone else's home? I can't imagine that. Again, it depends on how you design it, and it depends also if Jim Bradley got here and he could show his compliance talk, you would see that we would start to have some sort of review of our buildings, our residential buildings, and so you'd start to see that people could see whether or not there were old, inefficient fossil fuel heating system in the home. But he's not here to give that talk.
Well, we may get to that after the butterfly. Let me ask you this. Tom, for you, please. How or why does the cost per job per year decrease so rapidly and dramatically in the Zero Energy Now proposal?
Well, in terms of our budget, we were able to figure out program costs, and I think in the packet that is either on the website or went out to all of you, I'm not sure, it shows it in much greater detail, but we had certain startup costs and very, very few projects happening initially, because we want to make sure that our program is really well set up, really designed for the long term. Our pilots had to be constrained by the rules of this Green Mountain Power Seed Fund, which meant that they had to be done in less than a year. And this was very painful to us because it's very hard to sell a $40,000 project in 3 months and then get it done in another 2 months. So over the long term, basically, it's the number of jobs, the sheer number of jobs that get done that get those program costs reduced. We were down to, by I think it was year 10 of our analysis, we were down to less than $500 per project. And on a $40,000 job, it's pretty easy to roll that cost into the cost of the job and pass it along to the homeowner in the financing process. I was surprised that it dropped that rapidly, but that's what it did.
Okay, we have about three or two minutes. Okay, yeah, 3 or 2 minutes left. You're rolling, Tom, so we're going to keep with you. I can feel the vibe right now. Actually, I thought Jen came up with a really good question, which is, can your proposal happen without EAN support? And roll from that one into, all right, what's your ask? Make your close here. What's the ask of this audience to help make your initiative happen?
No, certainly our program cannot happen without EAN, because you guys are all the people who want to get this done. And of course, there are other people too, but you're the ones who are sitting here. And our ask would be to those people in the room that have ideas or strategies on how we can move forward with this program quickly. We want to meet you. We want to talk to you. If you know where there are potential funding sources so that we can get something up and running here, or just partners who will help us network to get the ball rolling effectively so that we can design the details of the program, figure out all those sort of gnarly little things that we have to figure out, get some software put together that will really help us to model projects and also engage homeowners so that they really want to do this. We can convince them that this thing is going to work to their best interest. It's all of those things together. And we have a lot of personal energy and excitement about it, but we don't have the money, and we don't necessarily know everything we need to know to do it.
Thank you, Tom. Gabrielle. Same question.
I think so. I don't see anyone else pushing this. And frankly, this is the right room. We have the people who install the equipment in the room. We have legislators in the room. We have the former commissioner of the tax department in the room. Like, this is not, this is a discrete enough carve out that it is something that, frankly, analysis doesn't take a long time. What does take time is the stakeholder outreach and engagement. Frankly, drafting statute doesn't take a long time. What takes is the convincing of people, and that's what a network is about.
And so your ask is?
My ask is choose this as one of your options, although they're all good. And then that will help make this a priority for the network, so that there is more than just a few of us talking about how do we target our fossil fuel heated systems in our buildings.
Thank you very much. Let's please give a round of applause.